I was listening to Senator Ted Cruz, who's a leading Republican, and he was lamenting the international reaction to the terrible invasion of Israel by Hamas and the terrible things, the criminal, barbaric things that they did to people, to little children. And he referred, among the very first places he referred was the Sydney Opera House. The New South Wales government, the New South Wales police have attracted international attention to Australia, and it hasn't been very nice. It's been very bad for Australia, and it's bad, of course, for the enforcement of the law in Australia. I agree with you. Why didn't the police enforce the laws? Why haven't they enforced the laws in relation to the preaching that has been going on in some of the establishments in Australia where the most outrageous things are being said?
Yeah, so look, if Parliament reaches a conclusion that this sort of law is needed, and that's what happened, it was not opposed by the Labor Party in 2018 when it was put in place. The government brought it before Parliament. It was supported by a coalition of 31 community groups led by Vic Alhadeff, the former head of the Jewish Board of New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies. The law is in place. It's just unpersuasive for politicians to suggest that it's unenforceable. Vic Alhadeff subsequently has said that if the law is found to be wanting, change it, improve it. But on my reading of it, and the clear intention was to replace a previously failed law with something that was easier to enforce, that didn't have the high threshold that the normal law of incitement has. Changing it to threats and including the mental element of recklessness is clearly, and this is on the public record, on the second reading speeches, you could read this, it was intended to make this law enforceable. The intentions of Parliament have simply been ignored.
Where it says intentionally or recklessly threatens or incites, what does that mean, intentionally or recklessly? What does recklessly mean compared with doing it with intent, do you think?
Without regard, to my mind, it clearly makes the point that this law could attract liability to people who threaten violence without regard to whether it actually results in violence or whether it's perceived by others as encouraging violence. So it seems pretty clear that the police, I'm not sure whether this was encouraged by their political masters, but the police seemed very intent on avoiding antagonising an angry mob calling for Jews to be gassed. Now, that's just completely unacceptable, utterly unacceptable. It's more than a month now since this happened. They've said publicly that they were investigating. It seems pretty clear that it's now too late. They would have no idea who the people responsible were. They should have acted on the night and done something. It's now far too late. It should never be allowed to repeat.
The police brought them, did they not? They accompanied them from Lakemba to the Opera House, and more recently, haven't a similar group been brought from the same area to, of all places, Coogee? And why are the police doing this?
It's beyond me, David. I can't figure it out. It's clearly selective enforcement. I doubt whether this sort of conduct directed at any other community group would go unpunished or at least addressed. It's simply not good enough to allow clear breaches of the law to just be ignored. It brings the law into disrepute. And the statements from some politicians don't help when they say this law is toothless and unenforceable. I'd like to see an attempt to enforce it. As I understand it, there have been, I think it's 4 attempts to enforce this in the past. 2 of them are coming up next year for prosecution. So it doesn't. It's not persuasive that the law itself is somehow flawed. It was subject to quite a deal of debate at the time. So we'll see what happens down the track. But I think there's lessons here for the entire community.